If people do loot during natural disasters, I wouldn't even care anyway, but the fact of the matter is they are not.
And after weighing the pros and cons, they concluded that the safer option is to run into the fire to steal stuff.
Just when you thought the internet couldn't get worse, they somehow sink to a new low. We're going to talk about the fact that TikTok influencers are gaslighting the public and even defending looting as California continues to burn, and so much more. On today's episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast, my daily show where I take on the craziest ideas from across the internet, across our media, and across our politics, all from an independent perspective. Up first, like I mentioned, we've got to talk about the really tragic wildfires that are continuing to just wreak absolute devastation, both on a human and on a physical property level in California, and the pretty bizarre and incredibly disheartening and depressing response that we're seeing in some places in the disaster zones where people are taking advantage of the chaos and the fact that the authorities have their hands full and looting, breaking into homes and businesses and making off with tons of stuff, taking advantage of the crisis to enrich themselves in one of the most disgraceful things that I've seen in some time. And something you'd think we would all be able to condemn and say, yeah, that's bad. You would be wrong in 2025. Because huge TikTok influencers from the left are telling us that this isn't real and isn't happening, even as we see it unfold before our own eyes. Here's what one woman who styles herself as a news reporter and has more than 600,000 followers on TikTok, here's what she had to say about all the looting that's going on right now.
Let me tell y'all something, okay? If you truly think that people are getting in their vehicles to drive to areas that are actively on fire, to loot homes that have essentially been reduced to ash, I've got beachfront property in Idaho ready for you to buy.
Yes, I do think that because one, that's kind of human nature. Some people are really crappy people and are evil and greedy. And two, we've seen footage of it. They've arrested people caught in the act, but we're crazy, I guess.
They are lying. And every time there's a natural disaster, the conversation about people looting comes up. And to be quite honest, it is a very racialized depiction of looting.
Now, in this TikToker's defense, I have seen some people spreading images online of Black men carrying things and leaving a burning building and saying it's looters, but it turns out they're just homeowners. And that's obviously really horrible. And people should not be spreading information about that without verifying it and making sure that they're not smearing some innocent person. There may be some racialized aspect to it. I don't know. It may also be that certain racial groups are more likely to engage in looting. I don't know. I haven't looked at the data here, but it is real. And I don't care about the race of the people committing it. It's a terrible thing to exploit people during their most vulnerable times to enrich yourself, and it destroys social cohesion and trust. And so I don't care what race they are, they belong behind bars. But apparently we're just imagining this all as part of our racism or something, according to this reporter on TikTok.
During natural disasters, people's first thought isn't, let me go steal from these people whose homes are actively on fire. No, that's not.
It's not most people's response, but it is some people's response. We see this in any natural disaster. Some people take advantage of the chaos to loot. Hurricane Katrina, storms, fires, earthquakes, whatever it may be, people do this. You can't just claim it's not a thing. Like, what?
And to be quite honest with you, if people do loot during natural disasters, I wouldn't even care anyway. But the fact of the matter is they are not.
Shocker. The person who says looting isn't happening also is fine with it. Like, just say you're a leftist who doesn't believe anyone has a right to their own property and go. That would be so much easier.
These homes have been reduced to ash. You have people that are standing in front of their houses that don't even exist anymore. Everything has been burnt down. So the idea that somebody is going to get in a vehicle and pass roads that are blocked off from vehicles to get to homes in a fire zone to steal property that has probably been burnt down is a lie.
Do they not get how this works? Like, imagine prepping a whole video about looting and not understanding. They're not looting the burnt out houses. They're looting the houses that haven't been burnt yet, that people have evacuated because the fire is coming. That's not that hard a concept to grasp, is it?
And it's a bold-faced lie. And the racialized aspect of it cannot be ignored.
Okay, you're just ignoring the whole thing, telling us it's not a problem, despite the ample news reporting on it and the fact that they've caught many people in the act. Take a listen to this clip from CBS News, for example.
Police across the area are also on high alert for looters out here. They have already arrested nearly 24 people inside evacuation areas.
I love my neighbors, and it's like you feel guilty because I survived. I couldn't save the whole block.
But even as he worked to put out hotspots, another threat emerged: looters. He says he and a neighbor have chased off 2 groups attempting to break into the homes still standing.
What kind of person, what kind of human being would take advantage of somebody at that point? It's just like, I don't even want to say what I would do, but it's shocking.
This was the view from Jonathan Esham's home Tuesday as the Eaton fire raced towards it. He evacuated, and while the fire stayed out, it appears someone tried to break in, busting out a window and trying to pry this one open.
The idea that somebody could have been in your house while you guys were evacuated.
It's horrifying.
A horror disgustingly man-made in the middle of this massive natural disaster.
Liberal-leaning media outlets like the LA Times have reported as well on the dozens of people who've already been arrested for looting in California. Like, take your pick of your media source. It's not just right-wing media reporting this. It's just what's happening. They've also even caught some people dressing up as firefighters and then going around and looting and using that as a disguise. Take a listen to this police official explaining.
When I was out there in the Malibu area, I saw a gentleman that looked like a firefighter, and I asked him if he was okay because he was sitting down. I didn't realize we had him in handcuffs. We were turning him over to LAPD because he was dressed like a fireman, and he was not. He just got caught burglarizing a home.
And they have images of this dude in a firefighter costume, and he's not a firefighter. Like, this isn't fake. This was just one of many videos, maybe the most popular one, but I searched and I found tons of videos saying looting is not happening. This is just police propaganda. This is just the government trying to distract from their failures. And look, I don't think we should only talk about looting. Obviously, there's so many other issues surrounding this, like environmental policies, like controlled burns, like the wildfire prevention policies, all the things that go into this, what the situation with water and the reservoirs, the fire department and some of the crazy stuff going on there. All of this stuff is totally legit, but everyone's still talking about that. Talking about looting also happening and being a problem doesn't mean you can't also talk about those other things. Like, that's not a valid point, and you only discredit yourself as somebody who could raise awareness about those other issues, including climate change, like people are very concerned about. And I don't think anybody really disputes that climate change makes these problems worse, potentially. I think people who are claiming that's the cause for this are ignoring much more directly impactful policies at the state and local level that account for this kind of thing, I think, on a much more significant basis. But you could talk about all these things, but instead you're saying looting isn't real, even though we have the evidence right before us for our own eyes. Like, you're just annihilating your own credibility in what? Pursuit of some leftist political ideology? It's like, I don't know. I have very strong ideological beliefs, but I don't know that I could ever, or I certainly hope I would never, be driven to the point of just denying reality because of them. Like, that's when you've lost the plot. Now, some people online are not denying that looting is happening, but simply suggesting instead that it's actually good and fine and understandable. Take a listen to this interesting take.
I want to take a minute to talk about looting, because I think it's worth considering why people would run into an active fire to steal stuff, rather than fleeing the fire. And it seems like in the media coverage that I'm listening to that people think that people are just like greedy who want to be looting. And I'm just wondering if maybe these people have actually considered whether it is safer for them to run into a fire or to continue to exist within capitalism without access to resources. And after weighing the pros and cons, they concluded that the safer option is to run into the fire to steal stuff. Because you never see like Elon or Jeff or Mark running into a fire to steal stuff, because they don't have to run into a fire to steal stuff. They can just steal from their workers via wage theft, and that's legal within capitalism. So if we want people to stop looting, I'm wondering if maybe the solution isn't to have more police, but rather to have a system where people don't feel like it's a better option to run into a fire
So there's a lot of Delulu to unpack there, but just for one quick thing, wage theft is actually a thing. It refers to when employers don't pay their employees what they're owed under law. But despite what this person is claiming, wage theft is illegal. It's a crime, and businesses can and do get in trouble for it. It's not allowed under capitalism. You're just wrong. And to the original point of this video, yes, we do think that people are greedy. I think everyone is basically greedy in the sense that they're self-interested to some degree, but some people are particularly greedy and have no shame and no concern for their fellow citizens or no problem screwing over their neighbors. Yes, some people are bad and have bad intentions. It's like progressives like this person seem to think that everybody is just sweethearted and kind at their core, and then just the evil forces of the world like capitalism force their hand into doing bad things. No, actually, some people are bad, really. And that's the way the world works. That's the way human nature works. And this perspective on things just strikes me as totally delusional and naive and utopian in a truly dangerous way. And I'm sorry, but people are not stealing jewelry from homes or raiding stores for flat screen TVs because they need resources to survive. Not that that would make it okay anyway, but no, they're doing so to make a quick buck at the cost of society and their neighbors getting stolen from, and they don't care. It's not that they're stealing bread to feed their starving children or anything like that. And for all you know, honestly, there's plenty of resources available to them through California's massive welfare state. They're not starving in the street and then just forced because of intense poverty, because of capitalism, to go steal flat screen TVs. That's not reality. All of these videos, all of these takes are just totally out of touch with reality. And it's coming at such a terrible time to be piling on and encouraging this harmful social behavior. We should be banding together as a country to support victims and people who've had their lives upended and destroyed. We should be talking about real solutions to prevent issues like this or reduce their frequency and severity. And yes, we should be talking about cracking down and punishing the bad actors who exploit these situations to make things worse, like looters. But instead, half the internet seems to want to deny the reality of this problem because they just ideologically are predisposed to sympathizing with people who want to take other people's stuff, and also arguing that it's good and that socially harmful crimes are actually fine and dandy or just the fault of evil, greedy capitalists. Like, no, babe, stop. Now, I do want to show you one video I found. And the unfortunate thing about TikTok is, of course, this woman's video got like 500 views or whatever. Barely anyone saw it. And the other ones got tons of views and likes and comments and shares. But this one lady, I actually thought had a take on it that was just chef's kiss.
Officials are planning a 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. curfew because people are looting. That caught me so off guard. Literally, people's houses are burning to the ground, to ashes. People are losing everything. I can't imagine in this whole wildfire situation, the first thing in somebody's sick mind is to run into somebody else's house that's literally burning with all this shit that they work so hard for, to go and steal. Are you people mad? Every single day I wake up and I understand that, like, we not the same species. Me and some of these human beings, we don't got the same batch number. We don't got the same serial number. We don't got the same nothing. Y'all are not human beings. In this whole horrible, devastating situation, the first thing you can think of is to go and steal? Are you mad?
She had me gagged with the "we're not the same species," but I do agree. And I thought it was funny the way that she put it. I just can't relate to somebody who would go and exploit their community at its most vulnerable time, or drive to another community they're not even a part of and exploit people at their most vulnerable time. Like, you have to be the lowest of the low. It's a truly sick thing to do. And I'm glad that some people, like this woman at least, still have the common sense in California to call this out and to advocate for a sane approach to recovering from this tragedy. Anyway, while we're speaking about things that are not helpful in recovering from the wildfires destroying California right now, we should talk briefly about Elon Musk, who is tweeting a lot about the situation, among many other things, and tweeting some things that made me raise an eyebrow, to say the very least. Elon shared a tweet that said looting Newsom and California Democrats literally decriminalized looting, barring police from arresting looters and prosecutors from prosecuting them. Now he's opposed to looting, referencing the fact that California Governor Gavin Newsom had put out a tweet condemning looting and promising they'd all be prosecuted. Elon shared it and put a clown emoji and a globe emoji. Now, Elon has more than 200 million followers on X, and his posts are reposted and shared across all sorts of platforms and make headlines. So I think he has a responsibility to use that platform responsibly, but he seems to post a lot of things without fact-checking them. And this is one of those instances, because what he shared is not accurate or true. They have already arrested dozens of people for looting and are charging them and prosecuting them, which they couldn't do if looting had been decriminalized. Remember, the definition of decriminalization is the action or process of ceasing to treat something as illegal or as a criminal offense. Now, California did, with a ballot initiative that I've extensively criticized, make some forms of theft a misdemeanor. Not the same thing as decriminalizing it, still a misdemeanor, but such a minor penalty that in practice people weren't being punished for it very harshly and were just stealing over and over again. It was a terrible thing that they've since changed. However, even under that old legal system, looting was still a crime. If you broke into people's homes or broke into closed stores, you are violating burglary statutes that carry multi-year prison sentences and can be felonies under California law. I spoke with a friend of mine who's a defense attorney in California, and he showed me the specific statutes that have been in place all this time that can and were, on multiple occasions, including while Gavin Newsom was governor, used to prosecute looters. You can absolutely criticize California for being soft on crime. I've done so many times, especially being soft on shoplifting and other things like that, which they have been, and it's been a real problem. And they're finally, I think, reversing course on that. But Gavin Newsom was actually correct when he pushed back on Elon. Newsom tweeted in response to Elon, "Stop encouraging looting by lying and telling people it's decriminalized. It's not. It's illegal as it always has been. Bad actors will be arrested and prosecuted." Now, a community note was appended to Gavin Newsom's tweet that says, "California reduced the penalties for all theft crimes, including loot, to a misdemeanor if under 950, with Prop 47 in 2013 that Gavin Newsom supported." Importantly, guys, that's still not decriminalized. It was still illegal. And also other statutes that weren't affected by that proposition would criminalize burglary and other things involved in what we consider looting. That more applied to shoplifting and things like that. The note continued, in 2024, voters repealed much of that with Prop 36. Governor Newsom campaigned against Prop 36. That's fine, and people can criticize Gavin Newsom for opposing that initiative. I certainly have and will continue to do so. People can criticize him for being soft on crime. I have, and I will continue to do so. But facts do matter, and Gavin Newsom is correct here. Elon is not correct. Looting has never been decriminalized in California. And this is more than just a fact-checking issue. Elon has hundreds of millions of followers, and not all of them are good people. Some people may well see him saying, "Oh, looting is decriminalized in California," and go out and decide to loot and join the madness and join the crime. And to that extent, the false information he's spreading could be really harmful. I like Elon. I think he's done a lot of good work, but I just wish he took more care with the things he posted online, because he seems to constantly be sharing things to his massive audience without doing much due diligence. And I just think that's irresponsible when you have so many people hanging on your every word. But what do you guys think of the Elon thing, of the TikTok denying looting and also telling us it's fine? Let me know what you think about all of this. I want to hear from you guys. Do hit that like button while you're at it and make sure you're subscribed if you aren't yet. And now we got to talk about Biden, because he just had his worst senior moment of all time. Like, guys, we've seen a lot of bad Biden gaffes where he looks like he is completely lost and doesn't know what's going on. But this is the hardest to watch. It's the toughest one I've ever seen, because he's asked a question about Havana syndrome, which is a kind of mysterious illness that was reported at some foreign U.S. sites like embassies and the like overseas that led some people to suspect that they were being kind of sabotaged or harmed in some way. Anyway, it's this whole thing. Biden was asked about this and went on over a minute-long answer about something else entirely. Take a listen. It's hard to watch.
If I could also ask about Havana syndrome. Today, the intelligence community assessment changed slightly, with 2 intelligence agencies now saying there's an even chance that this is being caused by a foreign actor. Do you personally believe that a foreign actor is responsible for these incidents?
No. Now, do I believe that ISIS's theology, if you will, has impacted people in America? Some that are not particularly well suited to handle the life they live. It has that effect. But I find no evidence, and I spent 17, 18 hours with the community right off the bat trying to determine whether or not there was any outside influence. And thus far, we find no connection between an outside player, individual. But that doesn't mean someone reading the malarkey that's going out there isn't influenced by it. Both these men, both in Nevada and in Louisiana, have been men who've had their own problems that but not because they've been influenced by a specific individual.
Sorry. So my question was on Havana syndrome, not Nevada. Sorry, on the Havana syndrome, the intelligence community today, part of their assessment changed, saying that there is now an even chance that the Havana syndrome cases and incidents, there's a foreign actor potentially behind them. Do you agree with that assessment?
I don't have the full brief on that right now. I'm not going to comment on that.
Do you have an update on Austin?
This is bleak. Biden, the sitting president of the United States, was asked an extremely clear question about Havana syndrome, which is something that a president is surely briefed about, knows all about, it's all in the news, and went on a long diatribe talking about recent attacks in the United States that had nothing to do with this. He just totally glitched, misunderstood the question entirely, and went off in his own reality for over a minute uninterrupted. And then when he did get brought back to reality, reminded what the question actually was, had nothing to say about it, even though he's the sitting president with the nuclear codes, who could be at any moment, guys, and this is, remember, the most important thing the president is ultimately responsible for is national security and our national defense. At any moment, Biden could be called into the emergency situation room and presented with an incoming nuclear strike or a world crisis and have minutes to make decisions that could literally affect the fate of humanity on this planet. And what if he just doesn't understand the question, just glitches, just stares off into the sunset, or thinking about what pudding he's going to have later? Like, this is not okay. They perpetuated a lie for years. The mainstream media, almost every leading politician in the Democratic Party, and lied to us and told us he was fine. It's all just right-wing fake news. All the while we saw with our eyes what was really happening with this man. And look, I've said this before. There's nothing wrong with aging and losing a step and cognitive decline. There's nothing immoral about that makes you a bad person. It happens to many people who age, and they deserve our sympathy and our compassion. But what is absolutely immoral, because it is so profoundly irresponsible and has put our whole nation at risk, is clinging to power past the point when you and your whole family know well that you are not suited to wield it. And I think it is a disgrace, and I think it will be looked back at through historians and just by generations of Americans to come as one of the biggest lies to be perpetuated on the public by a sitting president and his administration and his allies, and then one of the biggest scandals of media in terms of downplaying, denying, gaslighting, and defending the people in power from scrutiny when that's literally the opposite of their job. They're supposed to scrutinize what politicians say and hold them to account and question those who wield power and influence, not do their PR, not discredit the evidence against them or the facts that undercut what politicians are claiming. But that's what they did for years in mainstream media. They said Republicans are sharing cheap fakes. They literally invented a fake new term, because it wasn't deep fakes. It wasn't fake videos. It was cheap fakes, real videos that they just said were misleading or lacked context or whatever, AKA true things that undercut a narrative, and they try to brand them as some new form of misinformation or something. It's tough to watch and look. I'm glad that he'll only be in office for a matter of days now, but the fact that he's remained this way, and he's been all this way this whole while, has been putting our national security at risk. That's not really an open question at this point. We seem to have gotten away with it, and probably still will, without a true crisis happening and that vulnerability being exposed. But I've got to say, we really rolled the dice with that. And it's one of many reasons, I think, that because we have age minimums on the presidency, on being in Congress and the Senate and other jobs, we should also have age maximums, because nobody Biden's age really has the energy or the stamina to fulfill the world's hardest and most demanding job. And by age gating it, you can avoid this kind of situation at least a large share of the time, because if you had an age limit of 65 to enter the presidency, or 60 to enter a first term, or whatever we could come up with, we could quibble about the details. It's just some people could get early onset Alzheimer's or something. It could still become an issue, and I'm not saying Biden has that. I'm saying another person could have that. But most of the issues about potential cognitive decline while in office would be ameliorated by some sort of age maximum. And given that we already have minimums, I don't see why we wouldn't have the opposite, other than geriatrics being unwilling to give up their death grip on power. I mean, look at Nancy Pelosi, look at Republicans too, to a lesser extent, but they do it too. Look at Mitch McConnell. He's way too old and clearly in failing health, but is still in the Senate and still maintaining his position. So all of this, I think it's a real problem, both on a political level and on a media level. And I really hope that we've learned some lessons from this sad saga, but I just don't think we have, if I'm being honest. What do you guys think? What was your reaction to seeing this clip? Let me know in the comments, and do hit that like button while you're at it, and make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you aren't yet. All right, everybody, that'll be it for this episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining me, and we'll talk again tomorrow.